This year, guys, I think I love just getting four watches in the money line. I mean, this is the third or fourth consecutive week we've went 10-4 or 11-4 in the money line, just depending on how many games there were. This week we had 15 games because only the Colts and the Saints were on buys. Again, we went 11-4 in the money line. The misses being I had Atlanta over Carolina, I had Minnesota over Chicago, I had the Chargers over Jacksonville, and then I did have Kansas City over Denver. Kansas City over Denver was also one of the best bets I missed. I also missed the Rams. I had a -3. That was looking good the whole game. Seattle came back. They covered 21-19. It was only a 2-point game. So I did go 3 for 5 in best bets, like I have done 9 out of the 11 weeks of the 2025 NFL season so far. This puts me now on the year through 11 weeks. I went 115-49 in the money line. Last year in the money line at this point, I was 108-58. So, about a 7 game difference there. But in best bets, at this point throughout the season, I'm 34-55. Last year, I was 33-55. So we're at about the same pace. Now, we are at that point in the season where there's some games that just don't matter. The team is going to win. It's like, who cares? So we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. We're going to spend time on the games that actually matter. Thursday night, listen, the Jets covered by half a point or New England covered by half a point, depending on whatever line you got, whether it was 13.5 or 12.5. In my case, I got the 12.5, so New England did cover. I didn't bet it. I said I thought Thursday night games were weird. I thought the Jets would come out the way they did on their opening drive, get a touchdown, trying to make a statement, and then from there it was all Patriots. I thought the most encouraging sign for New England the whole game was the way their offensive line played. Jets are making a quarterback change. Justin Fields, another below barely 100-yard passing game. They're going to see if Tyrod Taylor can jumpstart the offense, but we all know the Jets are tanking. And New England, as I said last week now, has a legitimate case with that win over Tampa going down to Tampa. That was huge because they have a chance now to be the number one seed in the AFC. They take on the Bengals this week, and they're not going to have Jamar Chase because of the incident with Jalen Ramsey. Now, this Commanders Dolphins game, the last game overseas this year, it was in Spain. It was a mess. Listen, if you didn't wake up for this game, especially you West Coasters, you didn't miss anything. Both these teams are bad. There was horrendous clock management at the end of the game. Both teams were basically trying to give the game away. And in the end, Marcus Mariota is intercepted, and the Commanders are 3-8. And I said, progression in the NFL is not linear. I know Jane Daniels has been out this year. I know the Commanders have dealt with injuries from hell this season, but so have San Francisco. And the Commanders, in my opinion, you could see this coming down the tracks because they were the oldest team in the NFL this season. And there was a reason why I did not have them being a playoff team this year. A lot of people looked at me sideways, but it turns out I'm going to be right on that. And listen, the Dolphins have not given up on Mike McDaniel yet. Yeah, they did fire their general manager, but they've won two in a row. And all of a sudden, they have 4 wins. Two is not turning the football over. It's like great. We all know they need a reset. We all know they need a reboot. Um, Basically, this game was a whatever game. Let's put it the way it is. Now, what was not a whatever game was the Buffalo Tampa Bay shootout. Buffalo looks back to form. Josh Allen being Superman, putting up 5 touchdowns. 3 for the air, 2 on the ground. Sean Tucker had a huge game for Tampa Bay. They're going to need another weapon, I think, down the stretch. Without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, teams are doing their damnedest right now to take away Emeka Buka. Um, and Tampa's defense has pushed Josh Allen, and Josh Allen tore him apart. I thought that was maybe the best game Josh Allen has played all year easily. I think that Buffalo, their defense is not what scary as in years past. They're definitely an inconsistent team. but we can never count out Buffalo. It's one of the reasons why I know they're a wild card team right now, and I know they've had some bad losses this year. But if you were to tell me the Buffalo Bills are in the playoffs in the AFC side, I don't care if New England or Denver or Indianapolis are higher seeds. I have Josh Allen. If he plays like that, it's really hard to beat Buffalo. And Tampa Bay is a very good team. We know this. But that Bills team that we saw on Sunday could win any game any given Sunday. Now for the Falcons. First of all, what a big win for Carolina. I thought Atlanta could cover the 3.5. I didn't want to bet it because I didn't trust the Falcons. Good thing I didn't, or I would be absolutely pissed. Atlanta had the majority control of this game, and yet somehow they could not close it. Carolina found a way to get to overtime and then win it in overtime at the horn. And with the Tampa Bay loss, all of a sudden Carolina is easily in second place in the NFC South. And now that Michael Penix looks to be at least out 4 weeks, I've heard potentially even done for the year for the Falcons. The Panthers now have a real chance. I believe they still have to play Tampa Bay twice. And if they were to sweep them, and we know how well the Panthers play Tampa, especially at home in Carolina, we know Dave Canales, the former head coach in Tampa Bay, knows that personnel. And Bryce Young had to lead the game for a little bit. It was really the week of the backup quarterback. Jordan Love had to lead the game in the Packers game, and Malik Willis had to come in, and Josh Jacobs left the game. It was the week of injuries, I would say. Kirk Cousins, man, we saw him in the game against the Dolphins at home, did not look good. He did not look good here against the Panthers at all. They cannot drive the football down the field. Kirk Cousins looked washed, and they waited kept him for a reason. And now this is going to be his show for the next month, maybe with a couple weeks of practice with Zach Robinson, second year in the system. We'll see if Kirk Cousins has anything left. But Carolina, I thought going into the year they could be a feisty team. I didn't know how many wins they could get because I thought the top of the NFC was loaded, which they are. You just don't know what Panthers team you're going to get from week to week, which is why I don't think they're a playoff team. I don't think they can steal the NFC South from Tampa Bay. But this Falcons team, a lot of people picked to win the NFC South this year over Tampa Bay. I did not. I said I need to see more from Michael Penix, who is now dealing with his third knee injury, his potential third tear of the ACL. This one on his left knee, the other two on his right. You just worry about the mobility with Michael Penix. And the fact that Atlanta traded away the first round pick this year to go get James Pierce, who was a middle edge rusher. And the Rams are now going to have a top 7, 8 pick in the draft, in my opinion. So I said it at the time during the draft. I said, what the hell is Atlanta doing? And we said that about the Michael Penix pick. I think we might have been right on both. Okay, as I mentioned, the Giants with an interim head coach and Jameis Winston. You know Jameis Winston was going to play well. You knew Green Bay was going to have to hang in there. And you knew that eventually Jameis Winston was going to give the ball to the Packers. And that's exactly what happened. We know the Green Bay Packers played down to their competition. And they are once again third in a division that the Bears, as I said going into the year, this could happen. I said, could they take over that Viking spot where the Vikings they went 14-3? I'm not saying the Bears are going to go 14-3, but I did not trust Minnesota going into the year. I said they always play the Bears tough, which they do, and that was a wild back and forth game. They took the lead 17-16 on JJ McCarthy's really only big throw of the game. And then the kickoff return by Duvernay set up the game-winning field goal, and the Bears under Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams is staying composed. It was ugly early. They obviously started 0-2. They got blown up on the Lions week 2. People were questioning whether this Ben Johnson Caleb Williams partnership would work. But over the last 8 games, they're 7-1. And with the Lions losing to Philly on Sunday night, they are now the leaders in the NFC North. And for Minnesota, JJ McCarthy, ever since the Week 9 win on the road in Detroit, the last 2 home games against Baltimore and against Chicago, he's been bad. He's missing layups left and right, and he looks like a quarterback that's just uncomfortable. And, we said J.J. McCarthy had 7 weeks to sit behind Carson Wentz after the Lions game where he played great. We all said, maybe it was just he needed to sit. And Kevin O'Connell took a risk. They moved off Sam Darnold because they wanted to see what they had in the kid. And so far, it's looking like, in my opinion at least, the Vikings, I said, J.J. McCarthy can't work in this system with these weapons and this coach. He's not a very good enough a quarterback. And from what I've seen, there's a reason why he did not throw the ball a ton at Michigan. And the Vikings may need to go out and get a different quarterback. Now, the Chargers. Jacksonville just caused a lot of turnovers. Justin Herbert looked off all day. Quentin Johnson, and another zero burger for this team, which he's either really reliable or he's really not reliable. And the Jaguars now with that big win and Kansas City's lost to Denver, all of a sudden they are a playoff team. And we said with the Chargers offensive line injury, as much as we love Jim Harbaugh, you know, is there a chance that this team is just too banged up? Maybe they're still a playoff team, right? Maybe they still win 10, 11 games, but they're not as dynamic. I don't think at this point they're better than Denver. And I thought that the whole year going into this year until last weekend. I don't think they're better than Kansas City. I think right now these two teams are fighting for a wild card spot. And Trevor Lawrence looked really good. That Tudor running back, they started to mix in with Travis Etienne. They just whooped the Chargers on both sides of the line of scrimmage, which is a rarity in the Harbaugh era. But this game down in Jacksonville wasn't even close. Yes, it was West to East Coast time, but I don't know if that really made a difference in this game. This Houston Tennessee game was almost a carbon copy of the first game. 6-0, except this time it was Tennessee. Midway through the third quarter, Houston makes their run. Then all of a sudden, Cam Ward has a dynamic drive to tie the game. The Texans get in field goal range with Fairbairn. They win the game at the horn. They keep their season alive essentially with Davis Mills. Now they host the Bills on Thursday night. We know that defense is good, but Davis Mills against Josh Allen, I think I'll just take Buffalo all day on that. I'll trust that Josh Allen's going to make more plays. The Texans are just a weird team where you don't know what you're going to get from them every single week. Then Aaron Rodgers suffers that wrist injury. The Steelers dominate the Bengals, and the Joe Flacco magic to me has certainly wore off. This game was very different from the first game, where it was 7-6 Pittsburgh for a while. Then the floodgates just opened up for the Steelers. J.J. Watt, or T.J. Watt, excuse me, Hyde Smith, they started to get a lot of pressure on Joe Flacco. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the incident with Jamar Chase and Jalen Ramsey. Jamar Chase spits on him. Now he's going to miss this game. Now, the interesting thing for the Bengals is that Joe Burrow could be back by Thanksgiving, which will obviously make that Bengals Ravens game, the nightcap, much more interesting. They're not going to be a playoff team this year, and I don't think they should rush Joe Burrow back. But, I'm not going to blame this on Zach Taylor. Their defense has been horrific again. Obviously, we know ownership is not going to pay Trey Anderson, who's been out. I think it's made a real impact on that defense. Shamar Stewart's been a bust so far. As I've said the past couple of weeks, I didn't think their defense could get worse under Lou and Ramona Al Golden, and their defense has gotten worse. For the Steelers, obviously the bigger story is Aaron Rodgers. We'll see what comes out of it with that wrist injury. They took care of business, even with Mason Rudolph. They'll win games they're supposed to. They'll lose games they're supposed to. This team smells like another 9-8 finish to me. I really don't have a lot to say on Pittsburgh. They feel like a waste of time. Even if they win the division, they feel like a team that's not going to win a playoff game, especially with how strong the wild card teams could be in the AFC. Listen, the first 9 weeks of the season, Arizona was competitive in every game. The last 2 weeks, They have gotten blown out by their division rivals in Seattle and San Francisco. They are 0-4 in the division this year, including both losses to the Niners and the Seahawks. Arizona, I like Jonathan Gannon. I think they play hard for him. I think that win at Dallas was probably their season, it looks like. We know it looks like that Kyler Murray is going to be done in Arizona. Jacoby Brissett is clearly not the answer. Now Marvin Harrison is hurt. They feel like they need a little bit of a reset. But for San Francisco, that was their most impressive win of the season. Brock Purdy comes back. They go up and down the field in that Jonathan Gannon defense. And the Niners, even with all their injuries, they're still hanging in there. That Bears Niners game at the end of the season that takes place in San Francisco may be potentially, as I keep mentioning, for that final spot in the NFC. Either the Niners, Bears, or Packers are likely to finish with 10 wins, and one of them, in my opinion, is not making the playoffs. Now, the Rams tried to give it away against Seattle. They were up the whole game. Sam Darnold for 4 interceptions, and yet, despite that, they had a chance to kick the game winning field goal, which was nowhere close. But I think the fact that they had a chance to kick the game winning field goal with Darnold throwing for 4 interceptions shows how good that Seattle defense was. I mean, yes, they gave up 21 points, but two of those touchdowns were on short fields by bad interceptions from Darnold. Listen, the Rams are just finding a way to win. I think a lot like the Philadelphia Eagles, sometimes it may not be pretty. Matthew Stafford had a pretty off game. They threw it on third down for an incomplete pass to give Seattle a chance late. But for Seattle, to me, the story here is yes, your defense played great, but this is what you were concerned about going into the year about Sam Darnold and turning back into a pumpkin. I said McVay owned Seattle. Chris Shula, the defensive coordinator, did a number on Darnold. They got pressure in his face, over 50% on dropbacks in the second half. And if you're Seattle, that's the concern going forward. Obviously, the Chiefs, shockingly, in my opinion, because the way Denver had played the first 10 weeks of the year, Denver, I think, had heard all the noise. I thought even against the Cowboys, I thought Bo Nix, that last drive to go down, the big throws on third and long, I thought that was the best he's played all season long. Kansas City just looks like offensively, even with Rashid Rice back, and Kelsey had his best game of the season. He had an explosive play for a touchdown, but nothing looks easy. Mahomes looked a little bit off. He had that bad interception late. Um, Obviously, they had a PAT blocked, which changed the math on it. But I think Denver, we were looking for that signature win, right? We were looking for Denver to show that they're 8-2 wins when they were winning games 10-7 and 13-10, and they looked pretty bad against bad teams, which was the other concerning sign. I know it was at home, but Kansas City has owned Denver at home, though not so much in the Sean Payton era. Denver clearly was up for this game. They were prepared. They took the fight to the Chiefs. And from what I've seen this year, clearly teams are not afraid of Kansas City anymore, right? Buffalo was not afraid of Kansas City. Denver was not afraid of Kansas City. Philadelphia, obviously, not afraid of Kansas City. We'll see if that changes come the AFC side in the playoffs. I think Baltimore may still be afraid of Kansas City a little bit. The Browns did cover. Lamar Jackson did not play great at all. 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. First time he's done that in his career. I want to talk about Shedeur Sanders a little bit because Dylan Gabriel gets concussed in the first half. Shedeur Sanders enters the ball game. And I was really excited to see what he could do. It was obviously a disaster, though despite that, he had a chance to throw a game winning touchdown in the back of the end zone. But this Browns offense is a high school offense. It's run, short crossing route, punt. And, the operation may have looked a little bit clean under Dylan Gabriel, but Shedeur Sanders' ball looks a lot better when it comes ripping out of his hands. And, I think if you give Shedeur Sanders a full week against a Raiders team that has a terrible defense, we saw what Dallas did to them last night, even with George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb benched on the first drive. Dak Prescott and the Cowboys tore apart that Raiders defense. I want to see Shedeur Sanders with a full week of practice. I want to see the Browns getting shotgun more. I want to see them throw the ball on first down. I want to see them get creative. I want to see them find a way to get the ball in the hands of Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku and Errol Fannin, Dylan Sampson, Quinshawn Judkins. They may not have a lot of weapons, especially on the outside, but you got two good tight ends. You got two good running backs. They drafted the tight end. They drafted both running backs. And Njoku's been there for a while. Find a way to get him the ball. And the Browns look like a team that their defense plays well at home. They obviously don't play well on the road. They look like a team who's offensively tanking. But I don't think it's fair to come out here and say Shedeur Sanders was a bust because he looked lively and that team looked like they were playing for him more than they were under Dylan Gabriel. Then apparently the Philadelphia Eagles defense has turned into the 1985 Chicago Bears because I know the offense didn't look great. I know they only scored 16 points. The wind looked like it was really affecting throws, especially in the first half on both sides for Jalen Hurts and Jared Goff. Jalen Hurts played, I would say, a C minus to a D game on offense, and yet this game, even with the failed brotherly shoves, which the Lions found a way to stop it multiple times. You know, I do think they're going to ban the brotherly shove at the end of the season, but the Lions have showed that it's not an unstoppable play. And actually, believe it or not, the Eagles have had less success on that play this year than they have at any point during the brotherly shove era. So, but that Eagles defense, man, they talked about the losses this offseason of Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, and Darius Slay. And that defense has just been incredible. Morton Ajuro has stepped up. Jalen Phillips has been a huge addition. Obviously, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis pushing back the pocket. And I've always talked about how Jared Goff has struggled in cold weather. That Eagles defensive line made Jared Goff see ghost. Excuse me, on Sunday night. And that was the bigger story. I know they went for it. I know the brotherly shove, got denied. And, it did come down to a play. The pass interference, I think personally, is irrelevant because I don't think it mattered because I don't think the Lions were going to drive down and get a touchdown. Outside the Jameson Williams big play, they really didn't move the ball all night long. I thought this was more about the Eagles' defense taking apart the Lions' offense than anything else. And then obviously what Dallas did Monday night, they just took apart the Raiders. The Raiders look like a team that has given up. The Cowboys, they do what the Cowboys do, right? They beat tomato cans, they lose to the good teams. They play the Eagles very well. That should be a very good game. Sunday, 425 with Tom Brady, Kevin Burkhardt on the call. It's Cowboy week here in Philadelphia land. I think it's anybody's games. We know those Eagles Cowboys games. When Dak Prescott plays, they're always close. Remember, Jalen Carter tried to spit on Dak Prescott. Remember the incident that started the entire season. That rivalry obviously gets renewed this weekend. Like that clip from the Brand's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brand's World podcast right here on YouTube.